Thank you for coming. My name is Maureen Wilson. I know many of you, but some of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting. Welcome to our town hall. I think we've had so much rain. This might be the only night where there's no rain. And the fact that you have decided to spend that evening here with your neighbors and with me, hats off to you. Thank you for being here. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. The city of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase, 1792, between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the city of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. How am I seeking to try and lean into this forever learning journey? Last year, the month of April, I was really honored to attend the 12th annual historic gathering that was put on by the Mississaugas of the First Credit. It's been going on for 12 years. It's a time in which they tell their history, share in their research, and also have a good time. At the conclusion of day one, they announced that they were thinking and hoping of, for the first time ever, taking their historic gathering off the site of community and into one of the neighboring municipalities. And I'm really, really very pleased that I've been working with First Nations for the last year, and they will be holding their first, therefore the 13th historic gathering in the city of Hamilton at the end of April and into May. So I'm really pleased. We're going to forge a new relationship. We're going to continue to learn. Okay, so I'm very, very pleased that we have some wonderful community partners here with us tonight, starting with the Hamilton Police Service. In the Ward 1 office, I often get some questions about crime in the area. What's going on? What are we doing? What's our partnership like? I would like to think that we have a very strong relationship, but I'll ask them to either confirm or deny that with the Hamilton Police Service. We are very well served. So I'm going to introduce them. They're going to give a little overview of what's going on in Ward 1. Then there'll be some time for some Q&A. Then we'll have time for our next guests, which are from the city's Transportation Services Division, to talk to us about our streets and our roads and about road safety. And then we'll have a brief overview of the city budget. And then after that, it's open Q&A. So before any further ado, if I could ask members of the Hamilton Police Service to come up. Thank you.
Great. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Carolyn, and I first wanted to say it's nice to be invited to these types of events. So thank you to the counselor and staff and the team that put this together. Mike, who is the manager of roadway safety and who's with me tonight, we do a lot of these different conversations across a lot of the wards, all 15. And it's nice to see when so many people come out to listen to us. So again, I appreciate everyone's time this evening, and I thank the ward for having us here tonight. So there are a lot of synergies with us and the police. So when we talk about red light cameras and automated speed enforcement and graffiti, all of that falls under transportation. So we've got a presentation which we know we can't see this evening, but it'll be issued and you'll be able to see it. But we talk about a lot of the initiatives that we really have a lot of stakeholders and a lot of partners, and we can't do this alone. So not only are we working with the ward and meeting with the ward monthly to understand the concerns of the constituents, we have many other stakeholders that we dial back into. So we hear the concerns of the residents and the public, and then we're back talking to all of our colleagues, whether it's planning, whether it's policy, whether it's parking, whether it's MLE, whether it's the police. And we have so many other groups that support and work with us. And, and again, it really needs to be a collaborative approach in how we want to conduct the business and move things forward. So I wanted to start with that before we get into some of the other conversations. So transportation is huge. There are three major pieces of work or bodies, departments that fall under transportation. We have about 500 staff. We oversee and maintain over 6,500 lane kilometers of roadway, which is enormous. We oversee the parkways as well. We deal with all the bridges, major, minor culverts. So from a roadway maintenance perspective, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the work we do in the ward, we do everything within the right of way. So anything to do with your snow clearing, your grass cutting, garbage pickup, those are just to name some of the few that roadway maintenance do. And we have shifts and staff that work pretty much 24/7 to support and, all the snowstorms, all the plowing services. We had a heavy lift by a lot of staff that worked endless hours, countless hours to make the roads as safe as possible. So that's one major piece, the roadway operation. So any request that comes into the division that talks to how we maintain the assets, we issue that through service requests. We have a whole other piece of the business where they're logging all the requests. We date stamp. We have information about when we received it, how we rectified it, how we responded. And again, that allows us to track. So we're pulling data and matrix. I can tell you most things that have happened on your street, if there's been any inquiry, request, any piece of work we've done, the staff within transportation log everything, and we have metrics. So we can speak to a lot of what's happening with all the work. I can tell you where vehicles are on the road, what time, what day. We track everything because that's how we, again, making sure we're transparent, we're accountable, and we're delivering the services that have been approved by council, and obviously supporting the residents in what they're looking for in their own communities. Mike's group, who's the manager of the roadway safety team, deals with traffic signals, pavement marking, signage, red light camera, anything to do with Vision Zero road safety. A huge piece, again, of the division and the work that we do. And Mike's got quite a few examples that we'll talk to a little bit of what we did in 2024 and also what we did in 2025. And when we actually put it all together, I'm going to say kudos to the staff. I don't think we really give ourselves enough credit for all of the good work when we work with the constituents in the ward on all the things that we deliver across all 15 wards. And there's a lot. So I wanted to mention that. Vision Zero, I wanted to touch a little bit about just some of the policies. So in transportation, from a road network, our mandate is we want accessible, safe, multimodal roads for all ages and all abilities. That's the mandate that transportation lives by. So when we're working with our policy friends, when we're working with our engineering folks that implement projects on our behalf, or we're dealing with our parking and all of our partners, even the residents, that's our mandate. We want safe, efficient, convenient, multimodal that, again, helps the mobility of all road users. It's not the vehicle. That's a very antiquated, outdated thought process. We're moving into a much more adaptable form of how we want to design and construct roads. And it starts with policy. So anything we do from a road network perspective, as the asset owner, transportation is the asset owner of the road network and the bridges, is we are setting policies with our colleagues at the city to talk to how we want the roads to operate. There's different classes of roads from your rural all the way up into your urban, plus we've got parkways. So we have different classes of roads that deal with different volumes, they deal with different function, they deal with different speeds. And again, all of that is factored in how we want them to deliver the need for the city. And again, that's all done through policy. So a couple of the major things I just wanted to touch today are Vision Zero. So Vision Zero for us, we are working through, again, policy. It was approved by council in 2019. It's a 5-year plan, so it's coming due. Again, we're going to be working about how we measure ourselves. We measure ourselves annually on how we've implemented the Vision Zero action plan approved by council. There were a large number of deliverables, and then we'll be reassessing and putting that back out, and we'll be coming back with a brand new Vision Zero outlook. And what we're trying to do, again, from a road safety perspective, is decrease fatalities and serious injuries to zero. That's the mandate. So again, a lot of this is data driven. We collect all this data. We work very closely with the MTO. We work very closely with the Hamilton Police Services. And all of this is metric. So we can determine hotspots. We can determine what's happening at a specific intersection. We can determine what's happening on your street when you call us and say that speeding's happening on our street. And again, we work very closely with yourselves and with the ward office on doing speed studies and intersection studies. So again, there's a lot of background data driven work that we do in addition to observation out on site, because it really requires both, where we can tell you what's happening through snapshots 24 hours, 7 days a week, depending on how long we monitor it. So that's a lot of the work that's also happening in the background. The Vision Zero approach is different in that there's a couple of key principles. I just want to make sure I quote them correctly, is that traffic deaths are preventable. So we want to design roads that prevent serious injuries and fatalities, very different from how it was posed before. We want to integrate human failing in the approach, appreciating we're all human. Things happen, you know, whether you're walking, cycling, driving. So we, again, from a policy and design perspective, want to take into different features of how we design the road with curbs and sidewalks and boulevards and narrowing of streets and crosswalks and street lights. So there's so many different variables that we're looking at when we're trying to, again, put policy in place to how we're dealing with how we design roads. Prevent fatal and severe crashes, a systems approach, and saving lives is not expensive. And again, that's our top priority. Mike's group puts out an annual road safety report that we present to council, and it's us being very accountable to the metrics on how we are doing. So everything that we put into place, again, at the end of the year, we measure all the serious fatalities across the city, all serious collisions and fatalities across all age groups, genders, everything, type of vehicle, cyclists, motorists. We can tell, we present all that information, and then we're tracking how we're doing based on the different initiatives that we put into place. And the only other major component I want to talk to was the complete streets. I touched about it a little bit. So this is a policy document that was approved in working with our planning colleagues in 2022. This complete streets approach, again, a little bit more to what I was already mentioning, is about how we design and construct roads for all ages, all abilities, and not just the vehicle. I'm a huge advocate for ensuring that there are multi-uses, whether it's transit, cycling, sidewalks, vehicle. Again, we are accommodating all uses on the roadway, and that's how we're designing things moving forward here in the city of Hamilton. And there's been huge strides on all of the new designs and the work that we do, that we account for this and we make sure it's into place. And it also has, you know, we're working on different inequality bases and how we're putting that all into it. There's a lot of work still to be done by that, but we do have things that we're doing that take a look at the equality of how we're designing and who we're, you know, trying to service, because there's many groups we're trying to service. And that's something that we've started. We've got a good start, but there's a lot more work that's still that we need to do, and we're on that journey right now. I'm going to turn it over to Mike now just to give some Ward 1 road safety highlights, and then I'll end it off with a few other maintenance items. Mike?
Thank you. I'm just going to use interpretive dance to explain my slides to everyone. I have a list of bullet points, and I wasn't intending to read all of them. And what I have are some highlights that we did last year and that we're planning to do within the ward this year related to roadway safety. But it's more of an aggregate. We've done a lot of things within the ward, and it would take a while to list off all of them, but just some key highlights. Traffic signals, Carolyn mentioned the annual collision report. Collisions most often happen, or serious injury collisions and fatalities most often happen at signalized intersections. So it's important for us to make enhancements to signal intersections. And like what Carolyn was mentioning, making sure that they're accommodating the needs of people that use those intersections. One of the main users is pedestrians, and they're very at risk with intersections because there's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of conflict points. So within the ward, we made some pedestrian guidance enhancements to 6 of the main signalized intersections in the ward. Those guidance things are things such as the pedestrian countdown timers. You know, you get your little walking man or walking person, and then it tells you how much time you have to walk. That helps pedestrians gauge how quickly or how much time they have to cross the road, so they don't feel like they're necessarily being rushed. Another thing is called addressable pedestrian signals. Those are a little bit, the term's not great, but it's the push buttons that you push, and those push buttons aren't to activate the traffic signal. Those are the ones that tell you, mostly people have need visual aids. You know, if you hold those down, it'll say traveling north, and and stop and go and all that sort of thing. So that's one of the enhancements. That one's really interesting program because we connect with the CNIB, like Carolyn was saying, connecting with other stakeholders. So we go to the CNIB every year and we say, based on what you're hearing, where do you think these types of devices are needed the most in the city? So they will kind of give us those locations that they're aware of, and then we'll customize our work program to make sure we're putting those devices in where they're needed. Last year, with coordination with the ward councilor, we put in 31 speed cushions within the ward. That's the most, I believe it's the most of any ward last year. So 31 of them. People seem to love and hate speed cushions, but they really effective at controlling driver speed on local roadways. One of the things that if you go to a traffic intersection, if you ever have the opportunity to see there's boxes at every intersection. We have them decorated now with some artwork, but those are the computers that are operating the traffic signals. If you ever have a chance to look inside of them, they're pretty fascinating to me, but there's lots of equipment in there that's really controlling that traffic signal. So part of the thing that we're doing across the city, we're upgrading all of those traffic signal control cabinets and the devices that are in those, to modernize them so that we can control them better and they're more effective at controlling those traffic signals, and there's more flexibility for us to control those. So we did quite a few of those traffic controller equipment upgrades within the ward. Those are things that are a little bit invisible to the public. That's not happening unless you're seeing it in the moment. Part of my staff, I have a group called Transportation Systems. They're the ones who actually look at the signal timings and the way that traffic flows through the city. Part of the work that they do is something called a corridor review. So they'll look at how traffic is functioning across an entire corridor, and then they'll look at opportunities to enhance the efficient movement, but efficient, safe movement of all road users across that corridor. So last year they did two big ones. They did King Street and Main Street, where they did a complete comprehensive corridor review within Ward 1 for those two main streets. We absolutely, yeah. We that's a great question. The corridor meaning like a stretch of roadway, continuous roadway, like King Street from one end of the ward to the other end of the ward, that entire corridor. So every signalized intersection, unsignalized intersection they're looking at, they drive it in a vehicle, they walk it, and they're collecting all kinds of data about the way that corridor is operating. We put in 4 raised crosswalks in around Victoria Park. If you're familiar with around there in the Strathcona neighborhood. So that is one of the newer things that we've been doing in the city, is as a traffic calming enhancement, but also enhancing the safety of pedestrians. We're raising the roadway across the street. So if you're crossing the street, the street is raised to the same level as the sidewalk. And that works as a speed cushion for vehicles, but also provides an indicator for vehicles that there's something there as a crossing, but for pedestrians that they cross at a different level as well. And we have more raised crosswalks in the ward planned as well. Carolyn mentioned street lighting as being part of the safety equation, especially in the winter when we have those really short days and long nights. We enhanced the street lighting on Sanders and Sterling. If you're familiar with that, we added a whole additional pole line street lighting on both sides of the street on those roadways. We also look at non-signalized intersections. I talked about signalized intersections. We also did about a dozen non-signalized intersection upgrades as well. Am I taking too long?
We're not
Okay.
gonna get any questions.
Okay, sorry. Maybe I'll skip. Anyway, we're doing a lot around the ward. We're doing some small things and we're doing some large things. One of the big things that I'll touch on, and we're just finishing up now, that a lot of you might be familiar with, is the Strathcona and Kirkendall Complete Street Study, which is just coming to its conclusion right now. The final draft report is with the councillor, and once we have the report finished, then we'll move to the next phase, which is implementing all of those recommendations. And in total, there was about 83 of them. So we'll plan out all the implementation of all those recommendations for those two neighborhoods, which is a big thing. So Sorry, I can talk for a long time on this. I just wanted to touch briefly on hopefully briefly, but on the safety review process. What happens when you come to the city and you have a concern or complaint? What do we do with that? Carolyn mentioned we have a part of the group that does the intake of those. So if you do contact the city, you'll be sent to someone called an outside service rep. They'll take your information, they'll log your information, and you can get to them in a variety of different ways. We can provide some contact information after the fact, but we have email and phone. Even if you contact the ward counselor's office, they'll forward that information to us. So the function of logging is so that we keep track of who made the request, what was the request, when did we receive it, and then so that when we do something, we can follow back up and close the loop on it. When we get those requests, the very first thing that we do, just like when you go to the hospital emergency, if you've had the unfortunate circumstance, you go to the triage nurse, and the triage nurse looks at you. No, you sprained your finger. You're going to sit here for a while. You fell and broke your leg. We're going to put you in right away. We do the same thing, but we look at it from a safety perspective. So if the thing that you're bringing to us is something that we believe to be an extremely unsafe condition, then we will act on that very quickly. If it's something that's not, if it's something that's not so risky from a safety perspective, then it goes lower in that triaging list, because we get so many requests in a year, about 2,000 of them. We have to have some way of prioritizing them. Once we have that in hand, we start working on that item. We're going to do some analysis to understand what the issue is, what's the nature of it, and try to validate what the root cause of whatever that issue would be. And that may include on-site observations. It might include data collection, like speed data measurement and that sort of thing. And then once we have a collision history analysis, is another thing that we do quite frequently. Once we have that, we understand what the problem is. Then we can start looking at different alternatives to deal with that problem and solve that problem. And we'll come up with a bunch of different options and determine which is the best suited for that. We're looking at something that we can implement quickly and cost effectively, but most importantly, solves that issue or mitigates that issue that's identified. And then the last piece is implementing it. So implementing that thing, talking to, if you made a request and we're going to implement something, we'll tell you. We're going to put a speed cushion, or we're going to put this or that on your street to close that loop. So that's kind of the intake process of what we do behind the scenes when you come to us. Depending on what it is, sometimes it can take a really long time because of the amount of work that we have, but know that we're prioritizing those things and looking at it from a safety perspective first, and we're dealing with the things that have the highest public safety risk as fast as we can, and those other ones that have lower safety risk, they take a little bit longer. Good.
Right. I have one more slide and then we're almost finished. So just from a roadway maintenance perspective, I wanted to highlight just a couple things in closing. We've been working very closely with the ward office on 2 programs for resurfacing in the ward. There are reconstruction plans in play, but we're coming in because we operationally can't maintain the roads and they're in pretty bad shape. Aberdeen Avenue, so Dundurn Street South to Studholme. We're going to be coming out this spring, summer, pretty early. It's one of the first roads we're going to be going out through to do, and working with the ward office to get that just resurfaced, put a top layer on it just to hold it until the reconstruction comes down the road. We also have some work happening on Main Street West, so Coots Drive to Dalewood Avenue. Again, we're patrolling the roads. We're understanding conditions that we can't maintain anymore from a roadway perspective and maintenance, and that's them out, for example, filling potholes. So depending on some of the roads in the ward, we've put these forward and we're working with the ward office on them. With regards to sidewalk repair, we're going to be doing about 610 meters of sidewalk repair. So again, we go out from an asset management perspective, check the ward, anything that has serious, cracks, potential for someone to fall, they're marked, and we're going to be out there in the ward this spring tackling that as well, in addition to pavement marking, refresh, and a whole bunch of other things that we do. Catch basins will be clean, street sweeping is to begin, and grass cutting, we're in the ward 12 times throughout the season doing the grass cutting. We receive about 25,000 inquiries a year in transportation alone. Road safety receives about 2,500. We work very, very close with the ward office. And we want to hear from the residents on how things are doing, how we're doing. And then obviously we're tweaking our programs, whether it's from our capital reconstruction program. A lot of changes have been happening with that review since I've joined. all the way through to how we're maintaining things through snow. The previous snow event, we had a lot of conversation with all the councillors on those events, and even, you know, how we deliver our services. So thank you for having us here tonight. We're happy to answer any questions. And the contact details, the ward council will have it through the presentation to contact us.
Thank you both very much, Carolyn and Mike. Just a comment from me. Ward 1 has always and maintains the highest multimodal split in all of the city of Hamilton. What does that mean? It means in this ward, we do a combination of walking, cycling, taking transit, and driving our private vehicle or rental vehicle. And so that is always top of mind, certainly for me, and I certainly hear it at the door. There was, I don't know if there are any Globe and Mail readers in the audience. There was a letter to the editor on March 27th from a resident of Ward 1, a global audience, talking about the importance of walkability in Ward 1 and that they really appreciated it. It's why they came. That's one of the reasons that they're staying. So it does motivate us. They're very busy. When you are coming in, if you didn't see the boards outside, there is a summation of the work that is planned in terms of road resurfacing. There's a bit of a summation about the significant, how do I put it? The significant scope of work that is going to be involved with respect to Aberdeen and Dundurn. It's going to be a massive investment, massive undertaking, and massive historic opportunity. For more, you'll have to go to the Ward 1 website. That gives a little bit insight into that scope, and consultation on it will begin, I think, this autumn. So the person who's been waiting also patiently, Kirk Weaver, who's the Director of Financial Planning at the City of Hamilton. Thank you, Kirk. Kirk's going to just walk us through like Budget 101, and over to you. Thank you for being here.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so the task I was given was sort of a high-level overview of City's 2025 budget in 10 or 12 minutes. So I'll do my best to do that. And I did bring hard copy notes because that's a crutch I have, and now it's actually going to work. So that's good. So the city just wrapped up its 2025 budget, tax-supported budget. February 19th, it was adopted. It's a lengthy process that starts. Carolyn mentioned that her team is having conversations tomorrow. So I'm assuming that's prioritizing for 2026. So we finish one, we start the next one to get going. So the and Councillor Wilson had the privilege or the curse, depending how she views it, of leading the budget committee through that process this year. So the where your money goes. So the process this year, the City Council landed on 5.6. And which button am I pushing here to go forward? There we go, that one. A 5.6% average residential tax increase, which translates into about a $285 increase. Where does that money go? For the average property taxpayer who has an assessed home at $386,600, which is the citywide average. So many people will have homes that are at a higher average than that and below as well. They'll pay $5,361. And this wheel, which hopefully is clear on there, shows where that money goes. In 2025, $731 will go towards infrastructure. So this, and I'll get into this a little bit later in the deck, but this one of the key focuses of the 2025 budget was on renewing and upgrading city infrastructure. And so that's the city's council has made a significant investment in that aspect of it. City services, you'll see three, that section there is $2,391. That includes things like fire, transit, parks and rec, waste management, transportation. They're all in that $2,391. And then there's the police services, boards and agencies, and education and provincially shared services. They're all on that property tax bill. They're areas where City Council has less direct influence, particularly with boards and agencies and police services, where that's the police board will make the presentation of what their needs are, and City Council doesn't have as much influence on that number. In provincially shared, which is social services, public health, paramedics, and housing, there's cost sharing involved and service standards in many cases that the city must meet. So there's less wiggle room in terms of the cost there. And education is a flow through. We collect on behalf of the province for the education portion. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of the key priorities in the 2025 budget. And I should have mentioned before I moved that on that slide, just for context, the city's tax budget is $2.8 billion annually. 1.2 billion of that comes from the property taxpayer, with the balance coming from development charges, provincial subsidies and grants, and user fees. So it's 1.2 billion that comes from the property tax base. Housing and homelessness, City Council in the past couple of years has been making significant investments in this area. So this slide is showing you the 2025 investment of $192 million. City is directly investing $130 million of that, 68%, with smaller portions coming from federal and provincial governments in helping to address the housing and homelessness issue. It includes things like investments in affordable and social housing, shelters, encampment supports, and tenant supports to keep people housed. So, and that investment has been ramping up in the past couple of years. In 2024, it was 185 million that the city invested. This year's investment or budget also includes additional advocacy efforts, and we've made an assumption within the budget for $14 million to come from the federal and provincial government, which hasn't been committed yet. But the City Council has made the decision to make significant advocacy efforts to try and get more involvement from senior levels of government in that file. As I mentioned, the city has been investing heavily in infrastructure in recent years, particularly in 2025. Asset reinvestment, asset management plans have become something that the city must complete. So a number of them have been completed. Transportation has a master plan, asset management plan in place that identified a significant investment gap in order to maintain our assets at a particular level of service or standard. That gap was about $94 million. The city's financing plan includes a 10-year plan to close that gap. We're in year 3 of that plan. So it's about an additional $8.5 million roughly that goes into the budget annually to close that infrastructure gap and help maintain our assets at a proper level of service. Growth and development, large projects in that category typically are paid for by development charges, but there can be some components that are serving the existing population, which would come from the tax levy. Development charges, we provide a number of exemptions that are discretionary, but more recently legislative change has required that the city provide exemptions to developers from development charges, and that cost has to be borne by the property taxpayers. And so that's been a significant investment as well in part of our capital projects. And we also have faced significant inflationary impacts in recent years on our capital infrastructure that is driving some of the need for investment. So where are the major investments in 2025? Transit, significant investment, $110 million. A couple of key projects. The transit and maintenance storage facility has $75 million in 2025. That's part of a larger $418 million project. Bus replacement program and expansion as part of the transit master plan. There's $15 million for replacement, $8 million for expansion of the transit of buses as part of a larger multi-year plan. So I think I believe that's 33 additional buses that will be purchased this year with those investments. Transportation network, Carolyn and her team are heavily involved in that. Some of the projects that are in 2025 are in the AAGD district with collector roads, 6 North, and also a preventative maintenance program, the $8.5 million that I mentioned earlier is part of that. There's Bridge 451 on Highway 5, Gordon Dean Avenue, Barton to Highway 8, and a snow disposal facility are included in the 2025 budget. I wouldn't be able to provide you with specific details on these projects, but I just wanted to provide you with some of the major investments that are driving the 2025 capital budget. There's also investments in economic development that are happening. It's $11 million there. significant investment in a paramedic central reporting station. It's an $82 million project. $62 million of that is in the 2025 budget. A combined Waterdown Police Fire Station is in the budget as well, and an expansion of the Mikasa Lodge B Wing is part of that, as well as some of our cyber resilience and recovery. There's significant investments there. One note on most of those investments would have happened eventually. They've just been accelerated because of the need to improve our cyber resilience and recovery as a result of the cyber attack that happened in 2024. So I've rushed through that, but that's sort of a highlight of the 2025 budget. And I'll do my best to answer any questions around process, or if there's any particular items that you want to delve into further.
Thanks so much, Kirk. Really appreciate that. Any questions on the budget?
The cybersecurity recovery, they're getting the money back to be paid in ransom, or
No, the
No.
city did not pay their ransom,
okay,
but as Kirk said, it was on the work plan for these investments. Just because more public agencies, particularly hospitals, are vulnerable, anywhere there's data, that investment was accelerated. So that's
Yeah, so there's two aspects. There's recovery, so there's investments required to recover lost systems as a result of the cyber attack. And there's cyber resilience, which is investments being made to strengthen our security to prevent this kind of thing from happening again to the extent that we can.
Maureen.
The development charges, does that account for in our tax percentage?
The percentage, there's $184 million budgeted to collect from as a result of development charge exemptions. So that's recovered either through, we have a multi-year plan where we are recovering from reserves, using reserves to offset some of the impact over the next 3 years. On a percentage basis, I don't have that off the top of my head.
So just a little bit of background on that. Development charges are a really nerdy, wonky thing, mathematically driven. But it used to be that if a new development was coming in, there would be a formula applied, and we would calculate what impact that development is going to have just in that survey, and what impact that development would have maybe to all existing surveys, and how much is charged to the developer for that initial capital cost. So the initial sewer, the initial road, the developer would upfront about 80% of that. Sometimes the formula would change. The province of Ontario created the Development Charges Act, and the province of Ontario determines its parameters. Sometimes the province of Ontario changes those parameters. In this case, the province did, I think, more than once.
Multiple times.
Multiple times. All under the auspices of getting more homes built quickly. But when that happens, when they provide an exemption, that means that the developer is not paying for those upfront capital costs. Everyone else is. So those costs are part of our budget.
Yeah, no, I thought it was last year, I thought they counted for like 1.3% on our taxes.
It did. So I do have it, and I checked through my notes. So in 2025, there's a total of 38.8 million in DC exemptions because of our multi-year reserve strategy to phase in the impact. 4.8 will hit the levy. So the taxpayer, for context, 1% is about $13 million. So it's less than 0.5% this year.
This is a really important, and not for tonight, we're going to have a separate public open house on affordable housing and housing. This is a really important policy conversation to be had, because a number of developers are telling us that these development charges are really exacting significant burden. They're affecting the type of units that are getting built. So rather than these small studio or one bedrooms, people aren't buying that anymore. but it's costing too much for the developer to build the 3-bedroom unit. So price affects behavior, right? And so we're going to have a good public conversation about development charges. In an ideal world, we shouldn't really have development charges. But, and I really try and refrain from kicking the province or the federal government unless and until we have a predictable, sustainable formula from our senior orders of government that pay for infrastructure. The money has to come from someplace. And so the conversation we have to have is, are our development charges fair? Are they wise? Are they prudent at this time? Are they squeezing the cost of housing to such a degree that it's actually causing more harm? That's a conversation we're going to have. Yeah, gentlemen.
Well, interesting question on the light rail.
Yeah.
Here a while, a few years, and I just don't know what's going on with it. Don't see anything budget on, any update on whether that's.
Yeah, so a little bit of history. Hamilton Light Rail has a very, very actually long history in Hamilton, even from the 1950s and 60s. If you look to the SkyTrain, which has taken off and affected the development in Vancouver, that was supposed to be built in Hamilton. But the council of the day looked at 100% dollars and said, no thanks. But jumping forward, it was recommended and it was to go ahead. And then the Ford government unannounced came into town on December, I believe the 19th, 2019, and just canceled the project at a press conference in the Sheraton Hotel downtown. Since that time, thankfully, very thankful for the Premier's reversal of that decision. Premier Ford, along with the Prime Minister, the federal government, they're fully funding LRT. We are the only community in Canada that will have a fully publicly funded, without any municipal dollars in it, high order transit. My position has always been a very strong advocate. It is a historic public investment in this community, and it provides us a historic opportunity to reimagine and redesign and actually also address a lot of those legacy issues that we were left with. Where it is right now, because there's no municipal money on the table, it's overseen by an agency that works at arm's length from the province called Metrolinx. Metrolinx is the transit concierge, organizer, planner in province of Ontario. We're hopeful. And I would make the case because of maybe an economic uncertain future with tariffs, there's no better time to invest in public infrastructure than now.
The update on the housing development down the Discovery.
I think it was a picture of it in one of the.
Well, there's been a picture for 5 years.
Not that I
The underground's done. But
Yep.
I mean, they have the little ground.
yeah, they were doing the underground. They were able to add some underground parking capacity. I think to be fair, and I don't know for sure this is a factor, we know in speaking with our partners in the private housing industry, they're struggling. We know as a public agent, our construction costs for materials have gone up 30%. Concrete, wood, those add on to the cost of a project, which means you get to do fewer projects. And I know the housing industry right now, they're really struggling. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer. Again, it's one of those things, if you, we can chat after or.
Sort of got
or email.
sidetracked when they brought up that 45-story tower next door.
Yeah, that I don't, my own opinion on that, that's not a reason for its delay. That was always a decision point that had to be made. Kim.
From the slide for addressing homelessness, we've increased our budget. Is that just for building more homes, or does that include like mental health support, addiction support, and other things besides just finding housing?
It covers the full suite of housing and supports to go with it. That's all captured in the 192 million.
So that's encampment support. That's the Housing Secretariat and the work they're doing in partnership with private and not-for-profit on bringing new buildings, some of which I tried to summarize in the last newsletter. That's emergency shelter. Yeah, it's all of that. Robin.
Just a quick question, Ian. This is temporary. What does temporary mean? How long is temporary?
Oh, for the Barton Tiffany? I don't know the answer to that. I know that council will be in receipt of 2 reports in the month of April. One will be looking at the procurement issue that was under study of, why did we buy it from a supplier over off seas? What have we learned? The other will be providing an update on that encampment. And I've gone on a tour of it. It's not encampment, beg your pardon, outdoor shelter. It's pretty impressive. Very methodical, a lot of time and attention put into it. Still, it will be temporary. What temporary means, I don't know at this time. Right. Any other questions for Kirk? Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Okay. If you're not familiar with Churchill Park, this is a mural that we commissioned for the back of the Stan Roscoe clubhouse. I think it's pretty spectacular. And we have a new mural on the outside of the Victoria Park clubhouse. There'll be some artwork going on when we get to the Alexander Park Fieldhouse renewal. And this is part of the agenda that I ran on, in that we should be giving value to our public spaces because they're one of the few assets that we collectively share together, where we can see our neighbors, where we can get outside, and Hamilton is worthy of beauty and beautiful things. So Q&A with me. Sign it. Give it to me. Tortoise.
We feature in Alexander Park.
Yeah.
And what can we expect when the skateboarding feature will be ready for you?
Right. So just a little background for folks who are not part of the boarding community or following this. A number of years ago, there was a strategic plan done, and what it found is we have a deficit of skate parks. Kids are not necessarily golfing anymore, they're boarding. And it's actually very much an adult thing too. I didn't know that. So there was a new skate park put in Valley Park in Stony Creek, and the other location that was that will serve Dundas and the west end of Hamilton is in Alexander Park, which is, if you can picture St. Mary's High School, just right in behind there. So the construction people got on site. The design was informed by some really good public consultation. They started work and they hit a significant amount of groundwater that they had not detected in all the geotechnical work. So they had to stop. They didn't know whether it was temporary as a consequence of some of the heavy rain of that season, but it's not. So they've had to get on board with professionals whose names what they do is, I don't know. But they're ready to come back with a recommendation. It will have a cost impact and it'll have to have a council decision. But I'm hopeful that if that approval is given for what needs to be done to address that groundwater, we can begin construction in August.
I think it's more like best case scenarios is late fall.
Late fall.
More, I gotta be honest, I think it's more like this spring.
Yeah.
next year.
So maybe late fall. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Not that I know of. We have the outdoor tennis courts at Victoria, which are really well used by folks from across the city. Those courts are going to be receiving a revamp, a new rebuild this season because they are so popular. But pickleball, to my knowledge, has not been identified in the recreation master plan for Ward 1.
It is supposed to connect the school to
Yeah,
the playground.
So it is, yeah,
Yeah.
there is a next one this year.
Oh, great.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I think it's really has been done really well. Yeah, so when we had some of that weather that Carolyn was talking about with, I think 53 centimeters, well, a lot of snow. What happened is it affected the base underneath of that floating bridge. Freeze thaw got disconnected. They had to rebuild some of the bottom, but it's up and operating now. Denise, hello. So I think Denise is talking about the land that if it would be North Strathcona North and what we would refer to as Barton Tiffany right now. Yeah,
It's actually central too.
yeah. Most of it is in Ward 2, with the exception, I think, of not even a sliver. Yeah, so it's Ward 2. So there is still a plan, but the plan was it was going to be designed part housing, part film studio, but very much dependent on private investment. And the film studio post-COVID, that
Like Bayfront Studios?
yeah, that has kind of settled, and the private partners have had to walk away from it, just trying to get investment dollars. Yeah, so the city still owns much of the property. As folks know from following the Barton Tiffany outdoor shelter thing, there is some land contamination, as there is in most of the North End, which was former industrial. Lewis.
I'm gonna cycle back to my original question about Oxford Street and that, because I didn't quite understand. So now we have engineering services. You could explain maybe kind of these different areas that are kind of affecting.
Sure. So Carolyn and Mike, who were here, they're basically responsible for the surface of the road up, right? Engineering services are responsible for everything pretty much below the asphalt. There are some streets that require a resurfacing. So they just pull the top off, they slap some more down. The objective is to try and get that shave and pave done into a cycle so that you're extending the life cycle of the road. What's happened in Hamilton, and I have been pretty dogmatic about this, is that this city intentionally underinvested in its assets. That's not on staff. That's a council decision. And this council has said those chickens have come home to roost. You just can see it in the condition of some of our primary assets, including our roads. And this council has said, we're going to have to up our capital reinvestment into what exists better. We've also had to increase our water rates. Not, again, a popular decision. Our water rates were the lowest in all of Ontario. In my opinion, that's not a badge of honor. It does not honor the value of water. And when you have low water rates, guess what? It means you don't get to do a lot of the subsurface engineering stuff. So that has also pushed out the work that we can do on rebuilding roads. It's also meant over time, instead of just shaving and paving, because we've fallen behind on that schedule, the road gets so deteriorated that it needs a full rebuild. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Where we don't have enough money to do anything. So stuff gets bumped because the province put forward a regulation called asset management. Very good thing to do. It said you're going to have to, every municipality in Ontario, you're going to have to account for every asset that you have. You're also going to have to account for what condition that asset's in, and you're also going to have to account for what you intend to do to get it back into a condition of good. A primary asset are roads. So this council, in injecting more money and increasing your water rates for a whole bunch of reasons, that means we can further accelerate that work. But that means some projects are getting bumped out because believe it or not, there are worse streets in Oxford. But when you live on that street, you want it done. And it also will depend on the subsurface work, what it is in relation to a larger city goal and other work going on in the area. Those are the things that go into informing the schedule. But as Kirk said, it's like the Macy's parade. The day the budget ends, 2 days later, the budget process begins. And that's when staff get together at their decision-making tables and they reassess those schedules. Sometimes it's good news, your street gets moved up. Sometimes not so good, your street might get bumped because they're triaging as well and trying to align all of those different goals.
So, but I'm just still confused with, so engineering services is kind of.
They do, because your street is more complicated, because you have to do the
Water,
main
sewer, concrete, asphalt.
That involves the engineering services.
And is there some kind of timeline I can get, or is it tough?
Afterwards, I can go where you fall in the 10-year plan, but that goes back to Hamilton Water again, not having the money to be able to do your water main. So you'll note they just did a big 500 million water main on York. They're doing a connection to Walk North. All that is going into yours. So that it's all related, but I can show you where you are in the 10-year plan.
What gets your attention for issues like this? Individuals, petitions, is it news? How do you get higher on a priority scale for community initiatives? Pickleball court, ways, artworks. What gets you excited here? How do I get you attention?
Well, someone tried to say something derisive of me, which is fine, but they said she has an agenda, to which I say, yes, I do. I have to. I run on an agenda clearly so that you can hold me accountable. And my campaign platform is pretty detailed. So that sets out some of the principles and some of the priorities. That's informed by these conversations when I go door to door and my life as a resident here. I'm also pretty data driven in that we're looking for where's the risk, and it's never a perfect science. I greatly respect the methodology and the approach of professional public servants, and then you mix it all together and you try and listen the best you can, and you're guided by just trying to do the right thing. And it's just the way. I don't know if that answers your question.
So it would be to look at your agenda, dive deeper into public servants, or use you as the conduit to utilize public servants?
No, my agenda was safe streets for all users. That's one of the reasons that motivated me to run for public office. I had 3 kids in 5 years. When you have a kid, you see the city differently. You see the legacy of unsafe conditions where priority was given to some other type of movement. And you just commit yourself to chipping away, doing the little things that can make a difference in someone's life every single day, and to doing the big things. 2-waying of Main Street is a big thing. If you look back at the history, if you go through the Hamilton Spectator, there were 900 business people who signed a petition in 1962, who said, please reverse the changes. This is killing our business. We told you it was going to kill our business. We have been saddled with something that has hurt people and business for too long. My commitment as someone who ran on Safe Streets, ran on the importance of small business, ran on the importance of the environment, that's a no-brainer for me. Not everybody's going to agree. That's how I work. It's a combination of holding me accountable. What did I run on? Data, working, I hope, respectfully and collaboratively with professional public servants who have a responsibility for the entire city. My world is Ward 1, but I also know that as goes the city, so goes my ward. So I have to be respectful of conditions and circumstances and needs across the entire city.
If we were to look, I think one of the concerns we had was Dundurn North.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's a challenge certainly when we get into minor arterial roads, which Dundurn North is. But transportation operations agreed to do a speed study there. Police have been present. They've handed out 22 tickets in the last couple of weeks. So there's pieces happening, but can somebody go in and redesign that road tomorrow? No. So it's going to be incremental as we move towards a better solution for that. And part of our challenge is waiting for LRT too, for how we can change a large part of it.
In and around it.
When York Boulevard is phase 2 is done this year, the intersection of York and Dundurn will be blown up, basically, removing those slip lanes that allow people to keep coming off York and zooming down fast. Those are gone. That hopefully will also require, now people have to make a proper right-hand turn. It will slow them down.
Stop.
and do that. We're also looking at working with that team about what other things can we introduce there, knowing that we can't rebuild the entire thing from scratch. So it's not a fast thing, it's an iterative process.
Yeah. Any other? You're welcome. Yes, and then
Is the HAAA ground still getting a retrofit?
yes. Without boring you with stuff I don't fully understand, the issue of the delay with HAAA had to do with stormwater runoff. And it has a lot of clay in that part. It's an existing neighborhood and it's serviced by combined sewer. So we had to work with the design engineer group who their job is to say, you can put this in, you can't put this in. You get a permit, you don't get a permit. And they treat public space just as they treat private development. So we had to ensure that the water runoff from that development was going to be able to be assumed by the existing combined sewer system. We've had to make some slight modifications to the design to allow for even more low impact so that the water stays on site. But we're going, the work is being tendered like right now, and construction will start in August. You're welcome. So that is a City Housing Hamilton development. It's called the Jamesville development, and it's going to be done in partnership with Indwell, who are a very reputable not-for-profit housing provider in the private sector. All the approvals were granted. It was to go ahead, but it was appealed by CN Rail. Does anybody here work for CN Rail? They're a bit of a challenge to work with, but they appealed, and I'm not at liberty to disclose much, but those conversations of mediation are continuing.
Is it their land?
No, but
Oh.
because they are an abutting landowner. Thank you very much. It's my practice to take, once the snow and the ice, I go to door to door. I can't do every door in the summer months. I take zones. So hopefully I'll get in your zone this spring and summer and fall, and we can have, I know some folks don't feel comfortable asking questions in a large group, and that's fine too. Phone, email, I hope to see you at the door. And we're gonna do this again in the fall, and we're gonna focus right on housing, because I think it's a really important discussion. We want to take our time working through. Hope you'll come. Hope you'll have a visit. Hope I can see you at the door. Thanks for coming.